Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. My name is Pavan Wankhade. We are back here to continue our discussion about Kubernetes RBAC. Okay. Yes, you can see with me we have Vaishnavi Mande. Okay, she is uh, one of our KuCL student. So yes, we let's start about the topic today, and our topic today is RBAC at client level. Okay, as considering that you have seen previous uh, videos as well. Okay, if not, you can go back to the channel and you can check with those videos, and then in the continuation we are having today's topic, that is RBAC at client level. Now in RBAC at client level, we need to understand first, that is what is this RBAC? Basically role based access control. Now in this role based access control, it is important that it is actually in the what we can say, it's a form of IAM, identity access and management. In this identity access and management, this RBAC actually involves the set of permissions for templates, or you can say set of permissions or templates, better word, and that actually determines who can execute what and where. I'll repeat, who can execute what and where. In this, who means subjects, okay, can execute what, that is verbs, and when we say where, that means your namespaces. Now this demonstration we are going to do right away here. Before that, look at this picture. In this picture you can see here is one Kubernetes cluster. In that cluster, in this diagram, we have a 4 node cluster where one node is a control plane and 3 Kubernetes node. Actually, in the demonstration, we are having 2 node cluster, one with control plane and another one node. And outside this cluster, we are having one client machine, and through that client machine, can we access your Kubernetes cluster? That is the point. Now, in this, I hope you understand that who can execute what and where. In this, the entire Kubernetes cluster obviously will not be managed by one person. We need multiple, uh, you can say, admin accounts. We need several Kubernetes developer accounts also to manage your Kubernetes environment for your hosting, developing, and testing your applications. Now, in this case, suppose and one thing also need to be noted here is we should not give full control access of your Kubernetes cluster to everyone. Means all type of admins, then let's say all developer accounts, everyone should not have the full access, right? That's what obviously not expected. And then when we say multiple users need to have different access on verbs, so how to manage that, this demo is all about it. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to use one client machine. You can also call it as a, like, let's say, workstation, where kubectl is only installed. It is not part of your Kubernetes cluster. Now using that file, one person should have access to your Kubernetes cluster, means basically need to access your control plane. So for that, what we are planning to have is we are going to create user. You can we can say that one user will be there. For that user's authentication, we are going to use OpenSSL keys, and next to that we need to form roles and role binding for that user. As we just now discussed, that is when we say role, like that user can execute what, that has to be specified. And in front of that, or in forward to that, we also need to have all these restrictions for that particular user under one namespace. The reason behind this is this roles are actually are type of namespace resource. Roles are basically type of namespace resource, and because of that reason we have to do this. Okay, so I just want to request Vaishnavi, that's let's go to our implementation part. Yes, perfect. Now have a look here, guys. This is our control plane. Now on this control plane, what we have to do is let's create one namespace. Let's say, for example, Unnati. The namespace Unnati got created. Next, we need to have three certificates, right? OpenSSL keys and certificates need to generate. So we'll create a directory test, and into that directory, we'll keep those certificates. Perfect. Let's use create key option. Okay. Sudo OpenSSL with RSA, gen RSA, with the output key name as user1.key. So basically, we are planning to have username as user1, and accordingly, we are putting name to the files. Next to that, we need to generate the CSR. Now, in CSR, there is a twist. The twist is, or you can say trick is there. That is, in CSR, it will ask for the interview questions, right? So here we need to mention the names, and in which organization name equals to namespace we have to mention, whereas the common name equals to the username. I'll repeat: organization name equals to namespace and common name equals to username. Rest of the values you decide what you want. Okay, let's say we have gone with country name in in state as MH. Okay, then organization name, your namespace name, Unnati. Okay, after that, common name, and common name, the username. In our case, user1. And yes, the CSR is ready. You can see that the key and the CSR. After this, now its next point is we need to go for the generating CRT certificate, right? So to sign this certificate, we will use again the OpenSSL command. Perfect. Now authentication. See, as we discussed, role-based access is purely towards the identity access and management, right? So for identity, whatever we needed, that we have created. Now it's time for who is done, who can access what, who can execute what, that has to be done. And for that, we need to go for creation of role. Perfect. So a role.yaml file we are creating here. In this role.yaml file, basically we are trying to define a role for user one by the name user one dash role. Okay. So you can see that kind is role. Then for the particular namespace Unnati, name of the role is going to be user one dash role, and next to that is rules, and that's what very important. Okay, we have discussed that can execute what and where. So when we are deciding can execute what, so here verbs are important. So look at it here: API groups, resources, and verbs. In the rules, we are deciding that API group, like all extensions app, this API group, these API groups will be allowed for this user, where this user one dash role will be applicable. Okay, then next to that, resources. Let's say I don't want to give node access for this particular user one. That's why in the resources, other than node, whatever accesses you want, you should provide. Let's say deployment, pod, services, and replica set. These accesses we want to give to that specific user. Now on these resources, what verbs can be provided? So get, list, okay, create, patch, delete. So these options you can mention. Suppose by any chance, in some cases, you don't want that user should not have the delete access, then from that verbs you can remove delete. We are keeping here intentionally right now. So yes, let's save this file and let's create a role. Vaishnavi, I think we should go for kubectl create command and let's create the role first before role binding. Perfect. Kubectl create or apply hyphen f role. And now the role is ready as per the definitions we have mentioned there. Now it's time that your user account related things are ready. Your role is also ready. Now we need to bind this, that which who can execute what, right? That binding will be done by role binding. So basically now we are going for creation of role binding. In role binding, it will be purely mentioned that the subject user one should have access to which role. Okay, because we can see, we can definitely can imagine this thing that there can be multiple user accounts and multiple roles. So which user should have what roles assigned, that will be purely defined by the role binding. So basically it's a resource of Kubernetes called role binding. Okay, now in this you can see name equals to the name you want to give to your role binding. After that, this is also under the namespace. So we are assigning it to the same Unnati namespace. Then in subject section, you can see kind equals to user, name equals to which user account. So we have generated that key by user one for the user one account. I hope you remember that common name we have mentioned as user one. Okay, so here name is equals to user one. And in role reference, we are mentioning the role of user one dash role, which we have just now created. Okay, so yes, let's create this. Perfect. Now there are few more things to do. That is, on the client machine, we need to access this, right? So we have to go for setting the credentials along with that keys. So now the command is going to be kubectl config set credentials for user one. And there we are going to mention the client certificate and client key. Next to that, we need to have the context. So let's configure a context in which we'll mention the cluster name, namespace, and the user. So basically, we are binding the cluster, namespace, and user together. Once these are done, now those keys we can provide on the client machine, or it's better to what we can say, generate, read the data of that key and then take it there. So these keys should be used by that user one, right? On the, means by the Ubuntu name user account on that machine. Okay, so that's why chown, we are changing the ownership of that key to the login account username. Now next to that, let's convert the key and the certificate to data, and we'll keep that data, and we are going to have the config file. The config file reference, definitely we are going to take from the existing kube config file. In previous videos you might have seen this, that is on the control plane, whichever user account you're using, their cube config file is there, that we will take as a reference. Okay. So yes, Vaishnavi has copied confirm is what we can say. Read the certificate and key with base 64 and read the data from it. And that data we are going to use in the config file. So existing control plane you're using by the admin account, and we have to replace those keys and certificate by user one. Okay. And that's why we are taking this data. Okay. So now what we are going to do is we are going to copy that config file which are having for admin account for reference purpose on the machine, that is your client machine. Okay. So you can see that we'll use the scp command, copying the kube config file to our client machine at the location slash tmp slash myconfig. Perfect. Let's go to the client machine, and this is the final thing we have to do. On the client machine now, we'll simply go with making the changes into that config file. Okay. So what changes basically need to be done? In those changes, we needed to delete those client certificate data, okay, which are there for the Kubernetes admin user. We need to place it for the user one. Also, we have to make the changes in the name of the user and the context. Have a look for that. See here, client certificate data and client key data. Now changes in the name of the user account. Instead of Kubernetes hyphen use hyphen admin, we're going to use username as user one. Okay. In the context section also, we have to change the current context. We have given name to our context as user one dash context in previous command. Username, user one. Let's save this. And now let's give it a try for execution. Okay. Now our authentication will be there with the help of that my config file in tmp. So that's why when I run kubectl and any other thing in front of that, we have to mention the config file path. Okay. Now here, if you see kubectl get nodes, in get nodes, it says that error loading. 1 minute, error loading. Can you please check Vaishnavi line number 20 on that file? Yeah, go with escape colon 20. Check the cluster name, namespace, username, context, and the certificate and key data file. Right? Perfect. Now we have corrected that, and look at this now. It says node access is forbidden. The reason behind this is user one, using that user one, we are trying to get nodes. So basically verbs get for nodes is not allowed in the rules, and that's why it's not working. But yes, we had it for deployments, we had it for pods. So let's go for checking kubectl get pods and kubectl get deployments. Perfect. See, obviously there are no pods running there in the Unnati namespace. That's why list is not coming up, but you can see that no resource found in Unnati namespace. It's not an error, right? Perfect. Similarly, can you run kubectl get deployments? And this is how we can have RBAC at client level. So yes, please continue. Keep continue watching our channel. Okay, if you really like the video, please like it and please do subscribe it. Thank you so much, Vaishnavi, for this beautiful implementation. See you in the next video.